Yeah.
Yay! I wasn't ready.
It's okay.
It's almost like I'm out of practice, yet we've been live streaming every day.
But that's okay. You can be a little bit out of practice. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 303. 303 episodes.
It's crazy because episode 300 was 4 years ago.
It's true. We took a long hiatus to play a lot of Animal Crossing.
Man.
Welcome to the show, everyone. We appreciate you taking some time out tonight. A really fun episode because we get one of our favorite people on tonight. It's going to be an episode of Ask Coach Roche, singular. We didn't know if we'd be able to get Megan Roche tonight. She does have like full class schedule, getting her PhD in epidemiology. Did that one right?
She's going to save our planet.
Unfortunately, she is in class right now, but we have the next best thing, which is David Roche and Addie Dog. So we're going to get both of them on the show tonight for the Ask Coach Roche series. We're going to talk all about like motivation, finding motivation right now, and how we can continue to work our mind and our bodies and allow a little bit of grace to help ourselves get through this time without, while still keeping our fitness. It is possible. And there are lots of ways that we can stay motivated. And our coach tonight, David, is going to tell us all about it. So sit back, relax, everyone. Ginger Runner Live, episode number 303 begins now. Ginger Runner. Yay! Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 303. I'm your host, Ethan Newberry, and I am joined by...
Kimberly Tashima Newberry.
Correct.
Did I pass? Is my bottom thirds fixed?
Nope.
Oh. And by my bottom thirds, I mean...
the title on the screen. Just so everyone knows, there's a hyphen in Kimberly's last name on the title. It does not belong there.
I'm not sure who put that there.
Me neither. Autocorrect.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us tonight on Ginger Runner Live, episode 303. Our guest is David Roche, a.k.a. Coach Roche. We're going to be asking him all of your questions. If you have questions for David, jump into the live chat room where you are right now.
I am. So if you are new here, welcome. We are live. We'll be bringing David on in just a second. Because we are live, you guys can ask our guest questions. So if you guys have questions for David in regards to training, running, coaching, whatever it is, pop them in the chat room.
And I know the show title mentioned Megan would be joining David. Unfortunately, she has class right now. She is getting her PhD in epidemiology, which is a
very relevant
topic to the times. And so we do not want to take her out of class. She is doing her classes remotely, and we can talk a little bit about that on the show when we bring David on. But unfortunately, she will not be joining us tonight. But we have the next best thing. David and Addie Dog are going to be on the show. Before we introduce our guests, of course, we have some individuals that we like to thank for making this show happen. Yes, we are doing this full time. This is our job, doing live streams, films, reviews. We're still cranking out new content every single day on this channel. I say day, because it is in due part to our Patreon supporters, our GR crew, as we like to call them, that we are able to do this full time. And once all of this started going down here across the globe, Kim and I knew that we wanted to help bring our community together. So what we've been doing is daily live streams, which has been fantastic for our GR crew. And if you'd like to join our daily live streams, you can do so. All you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner, join the crew for as little as $3 a month. It helps us do this full time and get through all this. And it has been our saving grace being able to do these live streams every day, bringing the community together. We look forward to it every day. It is our therapy.
It's our motivation
It's
to
our
shower.
motivation to get out of bed and to shower.
Wash our faces.
It's awesome.
Possibly brush our teeth.
Possibly. That is not always the case. But we call it the Daily Brew. And we usually do a live stream over a cup of coffee or an afternoon beer. And we would love to have you join us. Two individuals at the top tier Patreon are, again, a huge part of why we're able to do this. Chris Lee out of Hong Kong, who has an organization called Trailblazer. They showcase all the trails in the region, have a brick and mortar, and does a lot of really fantastic things for the community there. And Brian Sands, who's been a longtime supporter, incredibly inspiring individual who has lost over 100 pounds in his running journey, ran his first marathon at the age of 50, his first 50K, doing many things for the community and for people, inspiring them across the globe. So shout out to those two individuals. Now, without further ado, He's visited the show a number of times. He is coming with his partner in crime, Addie Dog, David Roche, and Addie Dog.
Welcome. Yay.
Much for having us on. Megan's out there saving the world in epidemiology, and I'm like looking up some dog memes over here.
Let's just go ahead.
She might be able to make the end of the show. We'll see. It might be a special guest.
If there is a special guest, we of course welcome her with open arms. She's fantastic. You're both fantastic. How have you guys been holding up? Because I know you and I have been texting and talking and stuff over the last few weeks, obviously. But I would love for our live viewers to know how David Roche has been doing through all this.
Well, things are great. You know, my job is essentially getting to check in with my friends every day. So it's super nice in that regard for me. But I think one general thing that might be applicable to everyone on is that this time is super weird, and not just super weird in like obvious ways, super weird in unobvious ways. So, you know, like Megan and I were reflecting how like, you know, there was definitely more tension than there had been like 2 weeks ago, you know, like, and it's so weird because we always want to spend every minute together. So why is that a bad thing? And it's something that we see a lot in training logs too, is like, you know, relationships, especially long-term ones, like it's go into this weird moment and then they flux. And so in other words, however you're dealing with this, I would just say, don't make any really big decisions right now. Give yourself and those around you lots of grace to respond in perhaps illogical ways. You know, like I know I've responded illogically a lot of the time. So, yeah, I think for me, it's a little easier because my life doesn't really change. I rarely leave my house or put on pants anyway. So much different.
You don't have to tilt the camera down. We trust you. It's certainly been legs. I saw legs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were David's or Eddie's. I guess
I think that was an Addie leg.
It's been like basically every day has its ups and downs. Kind of what Kim and I have sort of realized is it's one thing to wake up and go, I'm prepared to take on this day, and however it unfolds, I'll accept. But inevitably, there comes a point in the day when you just get frustrated or disappointed or down on yourself or just down on the situation, down on the world, panicky, anxiety. We've talked about it on the last few episodes too. This is normal, right? Like this is normal to be feeling these ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think this time is amplifying normal processes in weird and unpredictable ways. Mm-hmm. And with that in mind, you know, life is full of joy and, you know, listlessness and anxiety and all these other things. And right now, the uncertainty, you throw that in there and it's like, you know, putting hot sauce in a dish or something. It just takes it up like 8 notches. And, you know, that's where we're at. And so different personalities will handle it differently. And that isn't a verdict on your mental strength. I think that's the big thing. Like, I'm like a more introverted person. I could be alone in the cabin in the woods for a long time. So it's a little easier on me perhaps than some others. But like you see other people that are just like these incredible humans who just want to be there for people, and their outlets are taken away in such a way that like makes them not even be able to be super present for their loved ones, you know?
Right.
So what I would just say is like the nonlinear nature of what's happening right now. This isn't something you need to get good at. This might persist for a bit, but let's assume that we're not going to be in this state for, you know, many times in the future. This is just a random experiment that we'll look back on as a fever dream. And at one point, and like dreams, you know, just don't read too much into it.
That's kind of what's been getting, bless you. That's kind of what has been. I was wondering what them, I've been seeing her mouth just like slowly look and move. We've been kind of talking about that every day too. And a couple comments here in the chat room bring up, you're using good phrasing, because I think it's putting it in a really approachable way, like tension. The idea that obviously there's just a lot of tension in everyone's lives right now. And I think visually like a rubber band, like everyone's just being pulled. I'm not saying everyone's going to snap, but I'm saying that there is this sort of underlying feeling of, you know, you're being pulled in all directions. And I'm going to relay this to like my family, I know that I have siblings that have children and are working from home and having to kind of balance their whole family running around them while they're trying to work. And that just sorts of like, it begins to pull at that tension. And recognizing the tension has been really helpful for me and for us, is kind of recognizing every day is going to pull you. Every day is going to stretch you. It might release, you're going to get those moments of like reprieve from that tension. And that sort of has been at least helpful for me as a daily anxiety sufferer my entire life, knowing that that tension isn't permanent.
One thing I would add to that whole concept though is, while it's a weird time, I'm purposely trying to not say it's a bad time, because, I think one thing, it's important. You are allowed to feel silly, to feel ridiculous, to care about running, to do all these other things. Just because there's bigger fish to fry, there's always really big fish to fry societally that, you can't, though it's too much if you conceive of it all the time, all at once. So yeah, we should do what we can all the time, as much as we can. And, right now, that might mean for a lot of people, especially those that have a ton of empathy, that they'll be a little like, they'll feel, Hetty, stop growling. They'll feel a little like, the tension pulled a little. But at the same time, like, it's also a fascinating experiment, not just because of the tension. It's a fascinating experiment because you're thrown into this new context, and there's going to be so many chances to make memories that you never would have. Like, spring 2011, who knows where you were? I don't remember where I was. Spring 2020, we're all going to remember forever. And that's super cool, even if it's not necessarily for the best reasons all the time.
My mind has also gone to that as well. I tend to take big chunks of life and think about them in that way. Like, I remember my time in LA, my 10 years in LA, and I have very emotional responses to that 10 years, even though within that 10 years, there were a lot of lows, some very high highs, but for the most part, I have very emotional responses to those 10 years as a whole. And I know years from now, I'll look back on this period, as many will, in certain ways, and to kind of like, what did I do during that time? And I feel the days are blending together in real time, but I feel like 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to look back and remember very specific things that we did or said, or interactions. Like, I'll remember this show because I know we always have a great time when we get to hang out with David.
Or like, we had a big hangout with friends last night. Like, I think we'll remember those types of moments too.
I want to remind everyone watching live that we are taking questions for David. This is an Ask Coach Roche episode. David Roche is a fantastic coach. He coaches both myself and Kim, as well as his wife, Megan, coaches many people and many athletes within the GR community. So we're going to ask as many questions as we can in our allotted time. I just wanted to start with kind of maybe the theme of the evening, and that's sort of finding motivation through this. There's been a lot of podcasts and discussions out there right now. But I want to sort of take the twist and keep it positive, rather than like, oh man, I have no motivation, what can I do? But more like, what are the things that we can find positive in this experience, where maybe it's not running motivation, maybe it's a motivation for something else, and find positives in that. So David, I'm going to turn the tables over to you for a second and just sort of gauge what you are getting from your athletes, as someone who works with a lot of individuals of varying lifestyles and across the globe. What is sort of the trend that you're seeing in your athletes regarding motivation or inspiration or that sort of thing in regards to their training?
For sure. And well, I'll start this with, like, in case anyone's on that hasn't heard me before, you are amazing. However you're dealing with this, we freaking got it, and it's okay. If you're not running, that's great. If you're running lots, that's great. But when it comes specifically to motivation and we're talking about running here, what I really want to drive home is not necessarily that stuff. Like, remember that, but the other part, that this is a major opportunity. While all of our lives are complicated in different ways, and some people won't have any time, if you do, the brain cares about these short-term goals like races. The body really doesn't. The way the body works over long-term cycles of months and years. A training cycle is just an excuse to structure this long-term process. But if you, as a coach, if you gave me an athlete without any training cycles, like any races to do, and you told me make them as good as you can in 3 years, it really wouldn't change that much. It would just change around the edges. So, thinking specifically of how the body adapts, like all of those processes that we're trying to go for operate year over year cycles. When you're talking about how aerobic development, biomechanical growth, musculoskeletal strength feeds back into running economy, cross training, strength training, all that stuff, it takes so long. And people don't really always have the opportunity to think of that because we're hopping from race lily pad to race lily pad. But right now, we just get the water ski on top of the pond, and that's where we're at now. So, yes, if you don't have time or energy to do it, this is a great reset time. And all I ask is that if you're taking a step back, you take that step back with the knowledge that it's going to fuel a leap forward. But you might be ready to make a leap forward now, even if you haven't been in the past few weeks. Like you might have just needed that time to reset. And if that's you, this is an amazing time to jump on training in a way that you might not have in the past. And, that doesn't mean going on doing 100-mile weeks. I think it just means thinking of your development in a focused and, hopeful way, in this way of, oh, what can I do at this race, which is always a little limited, right? Because the races are always close. What can I do in 3 or 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Sky's the freaking limit. And so right now, let's try to zoom out as much as we can, find joy in the moment, but like draw so much inspiration from the fact that like we're just scratching the surface.
I remember even very recently you've been posting great stories of some of your athletes' triumphs during a lot of this. And you highlighted one of your athletes who has been training for years, building base and being able to accomplish their things after years of building. And that's something that you've sort of instilled in me and Kim. And we're looking at this is one small step in a much wider perspective here, where yes, these few months we want to go and run 20 miles. Maybe we can't, maybe we're injured, or maybe we just aren't inspired to run, but it is just a small sort of rock dropped into a giant pool of athletic endeavor, right?
I think that that's a great example, and Amber wouldn't mind me telling this story at all. So the example Ethan's talking about is Amber Febraro. I was going back and looked at her first email from back in 2015, and she's the most delightful human you've ever seen. She's brilliant, all that stuff. And she talks about running marathons. She'd run a few already, so she'd had some sample size, and her marathon PR was just under 4 hours. And that's great. But she had really big dreams of maybe one day qualifying for Boston, which was one of the goals that she shared with her mom before her mom passed. And, lots happened between now and then. The background beat has been that Amber has continued believing in herself, not every day, not every month, but through so many life ups and downs that are not my story to tell. And this past weekend, on just like a typical long run, she ran 14 miles at 6:50 minutes per mile pace. And she's qualified for Boston by a ton. She's PR'd in the marathon by, close to an hour. And it's not like, a lot of that is not different training. It's just giving her body the time and space and belief to adapt. Right. And so that's the theme that, like, if you take anything from this, I really want, if you can write that down somewhere, like make that your keyword of this time. Belief, not necessarily belief in your marathon time, belief in your ability to keep growing, no matter what you're facing and what you're going through, because that, I think, belief is like the thing that provides that rocket fuel that makes like the impossible possible. And that's not just running, that goes for anything. And so, it goes for parenting, it goes for, any of this stuff. So yeah, I would just say believe. Why? For the heck of it. Like, don't worry about why, just believe.
I love that. And I want to remind everyone this is an Ask Coach Roche. So now we're going to get to turn the tables to you, our live viewers and our GR community. Kim has already, there's so many questions already. So I appreciate your patience in letting me ask David some questions to start the show off. But Kim, let's dive right on in there.
Yeah, and even though we do have a lot of questions, you can still ask questions, you guys, okay?
Yeah, bring them on.
Question from Carissa Z. Carissa says, how do we deal with feeling like we are not doing enough to help? I'm at home and unemployed and don't know how to help.
Well, first, I'm so sorry that, to a lot of people listening, especially Carissa and others, like, one thing I see in coaching, and I wrote about right away, is this time is immensely hard on people that aren't sick too. I know that we're all like, oh, well, what matters here is like the pandemic. And yes, it does on a societal scale, but to each of us, our own journeys and our tragedies can be really, it is the world. Like we are the star of our own play. And the financial hit of this time is so hard. And just know you're loved and we'll get through this and that's okay. But then as it relates to like doing more, I would really, like, as much as it's possible, caution people away from that sort of thinking about life in general. So the pandemic, it puts a magnifying glass on underlying issues that are always going to be there in a society. And all we can do in that context is our part. So yeah, that for some people, that might be you're on the front lines of medical care, and that's amazing. For other people, it might just mean trying to lift up those that you do interact with. It might just mean trying to be the best version of yourself that you can be. So when this is all done, you can, be there for other people that need it, whether that's a nurse or someone that had the disease or a family member or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I would really just say in all things, try to take the pressure off yourself. Like there is no amount of giving or doing that feels validating in the end. Really that has to come from like just trying to be the best person you can in the context of your life. So yeah, the long answer there, or shorter answer there, is you're freaking amazing as you are. And right now, what that means for a lot of us is that we probably should be sitting on our hands a little bit.
I'm always curious with that question too, because we feel the same way. We talk every day, just like, how can we help? What is within our means that we can do to assist people? And in my brain is thinking like beyond just donating to a charity. It's like, what can we do hands on that helps? And it's hard to sort of balance those thoughts of you're not doing enough,
and like the guilt that comes
along with that,
yeah.
And also the knowledge of like, just do what you can, which is what you can. And a lot of the times, we realize that just staying home is a part of doing your part, and
checking in with friends much as you can,
checking in with your family. Those are all things that are part of doing your part. I know that we could pound that home for sure.
We all want to change the world, right? But the reality of having met a lot of people that have changed the world is they're not necessarily doing it for the best motivations all the time either, right? So what I really think we should all focus on as much as we can is, yes, there are some of us that are listening probably that will have that opportunity, whether it's this or some other situation, much like there are some people listening that will win running races. But that's not necessarily a choice that people make in a concerted way. And unless it's coming from a good place, who knows what it really means in the end. So what I would focus on for everyone is like, we all have the ability, as much as we can within the context of our brain chemistry, to be that light in one person's life, or even a stranger, or whatever. And so maybe the thing we could all, like, if you're a trail runner listening to this, is be nice to people you see on the trails and roads, things like that. Those little things probably mean as much for society as like, maybe some of the bigger actions that seem a little bit more direct. But all those indirect actions are what adds up to, the beauty we're seeing across the board right now.
It was a direct connection with a comment in the chat room here from Connor saying the exact same thing. Just a little thing that you can do immediately is just being a little extra cheery, greeting, smiling when you are out on your runs. And even, it certainly goes a long way. We met our neighbor for the first, like, just by talking.
We've talked more from a distance to both of our neighbors in the last week than we have in the last
years.
2 years.
Yeah. And it's been fantastic. Like, it was just these bright, shiny lights within this darkness, right? Let's get to some more questions.
Yeah, a question from Liz in the chat room. Liz says, David, I'm a cross country and track coach for middle school and high school. Finding it hard to help them be motivated, not knowing what's going to happen. Do you have any creative ideas? Any advice?
I love that, Liz. I mean, I'm always after the intrinsic motivation where they're doing what they're doing for the sake of it rather than for the sake of something else. But what I would suggest for those for younger athletes, but any athlete, is to try to inject as much play into what you're doing as possible. So an example for maybe middle school or high school athletes would be diagonals or something. So like you go to you warm up for a mile or two, you go to a soccer field and you just run like a kid from one corner to the other corner, and then jog very slowly along the end zone or goal line or whatever, and then the same from the other corner. And you don't have to do it on a field. You can do it or you don't have to do it on like a soccer field. You can do it in an open field or anywhere, and do that for 15 or 20 minutes, and then cool down for a mile or two. Like that sort of thing is an opportunity for all of us. And then for anyone training right now to really think about the play element in the movements we're doing. I think sometimes it's so easy to distill running and trail running down to numbers on paper, like 4 miles or whatever. But within that 4 miles, your body's doing this crazy stuff and you're jumping and you're doing weird stuff. Even if you're just running on roads, it's like, close your eyes for a second and you realize how much you're doing and you're just engaging in every run. And so trying to think about those actions and how what you're doing it goes beyond like, running as it might look on a training log, and it gets into something so much more childlike.
Please correct me if this is a bad idea. I would not at all be offended, but one thing that I have been really loving just doing myself is gamifying the system. So if I like just being on my bike trainer indoors while I was injured, sucked. But the second I sort of gamified it and either using a system like Zwift or sort of looked at the numbers and went, oh, I want to ride the distance from Seattle to Snoqualmie Pass. That distance is like 86 miles. So maybe I'm going to make it my goal over the next 5 days to ride 86 miles or whatever it is. And sort of gamifying that system has been kind of this cool new outlet, which I'll take some inspiration from Ricky Gates because he has sort of taken running and removed the bib and turned it into sort of a game, running every street in his city or running across America and meeting certain people. That's something that I've been doing. And as David is my coach, I've been doing it sort of, I guess, secretly. So confession.
I know you've been biking. I didn't know the games. I totally love
mental games.
I mean, I might be a little controversial about this anyway, but I think right now, runners, if you ever find yourself out there on that run, questioning things or feeling emotions that you don't like and that you're not working through, time for some headphones, time for some good music. Like right now is probably not the time to listen to podcasts when you're running. Like now is the time to turn on, and I posted this in my coaching group today, the 00's rap playlist, the aughts rap playlist. Heck yes. Like things like that, things that make you feel that silliness, like now is the time to embrace all the things you might have like left behind a little bit because maybe there was something uncomfortable about it. Like I get, actually, I don't know if this is a common thing, but I often get, not often, but I've gotten criticism in the past for encouraging athletes to run with music, and that's like pros too. But I would really say now is the time that that sort of thing can really help too.
Bringing it back to play, like I love that. Just making sure that it's still a joyous occasion, and popping on some. Do you have that playlist? Is it linked on the swap page?
Yeah. That's great. I would also suggest like pop punk in general across the board is great. You put some Blink 182 on, you're good to go for at least like 5 miles. Like you won't even know you're touching the ground.
I love that. All right, keep going.
All right, we're not talking to each other on runs anymore.
Is that
just Blink 182?
We'll like signal when we have to say something to the other person, so they have to pause. Like what? Marriage, am I right, David?
Yeah.
That was too agreeable on David's side. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Addie's just like, oh, I guess I'll stay here for the scratchies.
So there was a
Aw.
Zwift question from DM in the chat room. DM says, doing a lot of Zwift biking recently due to lockdown. Can David advise if sessions on the bike are comparable with running in terms of training within certain heart rate zones?
Great
So I
question.
know some people are just some people are like really, really locked down where they are either limited to how long they can stay outside or they can't go out at all. So
I would try in general with cross training not to make it equivalent to running. Does that make sense? So in general, like I'm all about trying to enjoy the activity for what it is and not what it isn't. So biking is not running. It helps running. It's great for aerobic development. But if you start thinking of biking in the sense of like, how will this translate to running? One, you'll be disappointed when you start running again and it's hard at first because running is complicated. But two, you might not necessarily get as much like joy out of what you're doing as you can. So biking, cross training in general, amazing for running. It operates on a slightly longer term time scale. You should probably still try to run a little, even if you're running little circles around your house for 5 or 10 minutes a day, just to keep your body adapted. But like I think it's important not to try to. I mean, and you can at the extreme level, you can go to the Tour de France, where these athletes train 35 hours a week on the bike and are horrid runners. Even with a lot of training, they don't become great runners. So cross training is great, but at extreme levels, it's not that great. And so, it's much better if you just be like, I like riding, and this is healthy for me, and I like it, and then feed that back into your running as you develop. So, like with Ethan, for example, I've been really encouraging cycling, and I'm always going to encourage cycling. Now that they have this option, because it's amazing for aerobic development, as long as you're running, as long as you're also working in the other direction over time.
And just first-person experience, as David just mentioned, I have my personal bike set up right here with Zwift. Kim has the Nordic Track S22i here with the iFit, so she can do workouts and stuff. And these have been cross-training elements. As I was injured, I'm slowly bringing running back in, and I just told David the other day that my body feels clunky. It feels like my running isn't. Someone mentioned Phoebe from Friends in the chat room, and I was like, "That's how I felt trying to get back to running."
That's weird because that's exactly how you look.
I know. That's since day one, though.
Right.
If you go back and look at any of my movies, it's just like, what is this? An episode of Friends? This is boring. But it has been it's been really nice to have running, even just around our block, while supplementing a little bit of the cardio with the bike. It's been kind of fun to like think of every day as almost a 2 a day, and I don't know, it's been great. So David's guidance has been fantastic on this front, and it's certainly showed me that yes, biking's fun and great, but it's no substitute for running because your body's still just like, what is going on?
I'm just trying to say, like, if you view biking as it equals this many running miles,
right? This equals this,
and you're running short. And so it's amazing, but it's just a different box.
Mm-hmm. Keep going, babe. Sorry. Yep. Tons of questions there.
Yeah, great question from Nathan in the chat room. Nathan says, David, with the normal things we do being taken away, how bad is it to do 2-a-day runs or running every single day, almost for my sanity more than fitness?
So I guess that gets back a little bit to individual constraints and situations. For some people, this is essentially a pro athlete lifestyle where they're not going many places. They don't have much to do. Not to say that's Nathan, but like if that is you, like if your stress levels are actually not elevated substantially, it's a great time to experiment with training in a way that you might want to, but never really had the empty space to do it. So there's no substitute for the trial of miles. And the trial of miles involves sometimes running 2 times a day if you want to. So if you're healthy, if you're the type of athlete that doesn't get injured a lot, yeah, go for it. Run 2 times a day, do strides, like, make training, like, it's all about chase your freaking potential right now, in a real long-term way. I still think you should be taking 1 rest day a week, probably, unless you're like a hyper responder to training, like a genetic freak. But on that rest day, you can use a walk just like you would a run, like putting on your headphones or, changing, doing your warm up, putting on your headphones and just going out and walking or something to get that mental sanity element of it. But on a training perspective, like, yes, for some people, they need to relax right now, and that's 100% valid. And that might be most people. But for others, it's like, this is the time to see what you're capable of long term. This is time to start like picking up that kindling so you can frickin' light a fire later. And that might be where doubles come in.
I love that metaphor right there, which kind of works into the question that I wanted to ask regarding, is there too much to be doing right now, or is there too little to be doing right now? So if we are motivated to run and we have that energy and we're like, let's get our miles in, is there too much? Is there a maintenance mode? Is that going to be individual?
So, I've seen articles and things online saying you should be in maintenance mode right now at most or whatever. And I don't agree at all. I think it's hyper individual. It's hyper based on someone's background, and to be like aware that now is not the time to compare, but like, like I said, for a very top end pro athlete that's already explored their top end potential, yes, they should back off a little because there's no races imminently for them. For most of us, we're just starting, we're not even there yet. We don't even know where the horizon is. So why would we stop moving towards the horizon now? So, if people have the time, I would say, you have to know thyself, or if you have a coach, trust your coach to understand what type of stress levels you're okay balancing and how you absorb this. Like if you're the type of person that feels just very intensely about the pandemic, and the suffering people are having, then yes, you probably shouldn't run a ton right now, right? Because the body doesn't know miles, it knows stress. But if you're the type of person that might feel like you have this time, you have this recovery space, and the sustainable fire to do this training and not burn out, then, no better time than the present. Every day, every second that passes is one that we're not getting back. So, I wouldn't say everyone should do it, but definitely some athletes on the team, I'm like, well, now you're not doing your 2-hour commute every day. Let's see what we can do.
I do. You've said it before on the show, and I love it when you say it because it's a constant reminder to me. Your body doesn't know miles. Your body knows stress. And it's so easy to forget that it's a simple equation. If you are stressed at work, if you're stressed in life, relationships, anything.
Pandemic.
Yeah. Full on anvil of stress across everyone across this planet. It's like your body knows stress, not miles. So just kind of listening to that.
I think one thing that's really important for people that sounds less scientific than it is. I'm talking like your cells do not know the difference.
Right.
Like on the cellular level, there is no difference in interpretation. On the systems level, maybe when you're thinking about how bones and muscles are stressed. But that's not how our bodies interpret stress over time. It's all cellular. And so, understanding how that balances is key. And that's like where the magic of training comes in, is understanding what stress you can do sustainably to adapt. And there's a place for super compensation stresses, like big stresses that, your body can adapt to in a big way. That might be right now for someone like Nathan, who asked the question earlier. But for other athletes, like they might already be at their stress limits. So pushing a little bit further actually causes the body to regress, even if they stay healthy. So the unsatisfying answer is just got to know yourself. And I would just focus on everyone of not worrying about playing the weekly miles game. Like the weekly miles game has almost zero correlation past a certain point with long-term outcomes. What has a correlation with long-term outcomes is, developing running economy. And we have a ton of data behind the scenes that we've gathered over many years with athletes of all levels. And it's there's such little correlation within different mileage ranges. So like, yes, an athlete that can sustainably do like a ridiculous amount might be the type of athlete that progresses a lot. But like between 40 miles a week and 65 miles a week, there's no, like, you can't plot out where that trajectory is going without knowing a lot more about that person. So it's all very interesting behind the scenes.
I also just want to point out that you keep resuscitating Eddie. Keep seeing the pause every time the scratch is on the chest. It's adorable. A paw will just appear from under the. There it is. I'm here.
Oh.
Get to a couple more questions.
Gus is
here.
snoring.
Gus is snoring. He's out.
He's out. Question from Marie Claude in the chat room. Marie Claude asks, David, a lot of us are doing yoga challenges. I may be partially responsible for that. Is it better to run before or after? Is it okay to do a yoga practice right after a run?
Yeah, so I would say it depends on the type of yoga. A lot of yoga is actually very good at priming the muscles, but the general research indicates that stretching, like long hold stretching, which some yoga has enough of, directly before activity reduces muscle efficiency afterward. So I would say, lean towards doing it after you're running, if possible, or way earlier in the day. There's no particular evidence one way or the other if you do it later in the day or whatever. And so I would say it's totally fine to do right after as well. Like that's a great time. You're warm, as long as you make sure you don't ever want to do any of this stuff on no glycogen, because that's when the body's hypersensitive to stress and you can hurt yourself. But I'm a massive fan of yoga for people that love it. Like I generally think that the people that respond to yoga generally like yoga, and the people that don't. There's probably a reason for that. And so, I really encourage it. I would say you just probably don't want to be like able to contort yourself into a pretzel right before you run.
It's also funny that you say people who like it, and those who don't. It's been like instructor yogi dependent for me. Like there are yogis where I'm like, I cannot handle this. It's just too much. Where there's others, I'm like, this is fantastic. They're describing it really well, or the way that their breathing is good, or they're not talking to, I feel like it's when you find a therapist or when you find a coach, someone that you can communicate with and you like, can make a big difference too. I remember having an acupuncturist once. I never went back. I never got acupuncture again. It was one of those experiences where everyone's like, "You got to do acupuncture. It's gonna heal all your wounds." This was like 15 years ago, and I went to this person who everyone recommended, and I have never panicked so much in a room before because this person did not put me at ease. And I left there and I told all my friends like, "Oh my god, this was terrible." And my friends were like, "What are you? She's the best. She's the best." I've never gone back since.
We should do like a live on air at home acupuncture.
Are you going to go buy like acupuncture needles on Amazon?
No, I'll just use whatever we have.
Help me, David.
Patreon gold level. You get as soon as quarantine is lifted, you get to do the needles. It's amazing.
Or instruct me on where to put the needles.
We were able to save our business by just allowing people to puncture me. Oh no.
Right now for what a lot of businesses are going through.
Right. It's a pivot. It's a full pivot. Yeah. Go ahead, babe.
Question from J Rowan 99. J Rowan asked, with postponed spring races now being moved to the fall on top of races that I'm already registered for example, the Boston and New York Marathon, how much racing is too much? Oh,
there's a poor network connection. Reconnecting with David. It says reconnecting. I'm going to...
He has a very strong arm pose.
That is a really good pose. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to hang up on David. He might disappear for a second. And I'm going to bring him right back in. Let's see if that solves it. We've never had that happen before.
Do you think Addie just had enough of...
Yeah, maybe Addie pressed disconnect or something. We'll blame Addie for this. I wouldn't be surprised if David's doing like a full reboot or something right now.
Oh, maybe.
He just stepped offline, so I'm guessing something. Maybe the battery went out on the computer.
Oh.
I just kind of want to leave that still frame up there.
A2B2 says, "Oh my God, Ethan, have you ever had dry needling? I think you'd hate it."
Yes. So that is the correct answer.
They sounded way too excited about asking you, and then they close with, "I think you'd hate it."
I think you'd hate it. Dry needling. Can we do shit in a snowstorm? Says David. Can we do more?
Let's see.
I'm gonna try to connect him back up again. This show is not brought to you by
That's-
Skype. Hello.
Are we still recording? Is everything okay?
Oh, totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
everything's
we're
fine.
so- yeah.
We were just bantering.
I'm so sorry to everyone listening. That's a nightmare. We're in a little bit of a snowstorm in Boulder, so maybe that's it.
Oh, it's never happened before, so I anticipated it was like a battery died or something like that. But snowstorm is a legit excuse.
We have like a foot of snow here. It's crazy. So Jay Rowan was asking the question about races being pushed back to fall that on top of other races.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is how much racing is too
Too
much.
If you're asking that question, it's probably too much racing. So I would just say the way to think about that sort of thing is like the whole point of training and this life in general is building yourself up over time. Too much racing is breakdown stresses. And if you do enough breakdown stresses, eventually you just become broken down. So good there's a time and a place for it. But I would say make sure that all your bigger races are a month apart if you can. You can fill in with other things, and then just generally like it's okay to do less. And then for every athlete that's listening, like with the races being pushed back and the season uncertain, I would really try not to put too much certainty onto anything right now. We all have a tendency to be like, okay, well, my race in July will be on, or my race in August will be on, and I'll do this race and this race and this race. I think right now that's probably not a helpful intellectual exercise for anyone. So yes, there might be races that sell out and you need to think about that sort of thing. But short of that, I would just kind of let it ride right now and support race directors you want to support if that helps. But other than like when it comes to your own running, try to get in this long-term grind that really lifts you up and you're ready to go when it's time. But let's not try to imagine when that time will be quite yet, because I think that's setting us up for a stressful moment outside of running when, the world, the next month or two is going to be crazy in terms of politically and societally. And so let's not if you add on top of that, will my race be on? Then I think it might be a little much for anyone.
As race directors who have a race that had to be postponed, we don't know.
Yeah.
Permitting agencies aren't saying anything. Like they're basically saying we don't know. And
Situation's too fluid to
Way too
100% like
even
be
races.
like, this is what I'm doing in this month, this year.
Yeah.
It's just so much is up in the air.
Races that are scheduled in the fall, even if they're still scheduled, promise you they don't know.
Yeah.
They are also still sitting there going, we don't know. So yeah, it's just nothing can be answered like that quite yet. Maybe let's get to maybe one or two more questions live, and then we'll go into our after show.
Yeah, I was going to first comment that there's a lot of people commenting that they are also in a snowstorm or a rainstorm, and it's like beautiful, glorious shorts weather in Seattle.
It's gorgeous in the Pacific Northwest.
I don't know what's going on or what we did to deserve this.
It's been great. I'm sorry that you have a foot of snow on the ground and it's snowing currently.
Oh no, it's amazing.
I would like that.
We currently have 3 dogs here, so here's another dog. Not Addie. Those are other dogs.
Addie doesn't do costume changes.
Yeah, so they love the snow. But yeah, no, it's weird that the world that like the. Okay, I need to. Sorry. That the world goes on, right? And I think that that's one thing that a lot of people are struggling with is that while the world feels like it has stopped, it hasn't. All that's stopped is, the machinations of society, this amorphous blob that structures a lot of our lives, but in an indirect way. And so, yeah, it just gets back to how weird this moment is and how many conflicted feelings there are. You can be outside and it's the most beautiful day in the world and it looks like a zombie movie, And with that in mind, like really everyone listening to this, no matter what you feel, this is one time when like, even if whether you feel ecstatic joy, like that's a fine thing to feel. And if you feel total hopelessness, that is also okay. I would just say talk about whatever you do feel, and the people will understand. So you don't have to be sad. You don't have to be happy. You can be just about anything, and it's totally independent of your choices or, you know, your humanity or your empathy or anything like that. This is just not, our brains aren't equipped to handle this.
I love that you said that, because there was also a question just quickly that passed through in the live chat room regarding feeling negative thoughts, or if they're out on a run and they have like anger or frustration, how do you deal with that? And I think you just answered it. And feel it.
A week and a half ago, I was like out on a random trail alone, but I would have done it if I weren't alone. I've never done this before. I just screamed as loud as I could. And I'm not like particularly affected by the pandemic. I don't know where it came from, but like a loud scream, just like if you ever seen the movie Garden State, kind of like that. And it helped. Not a ton, but you can try that. I would also just try, like, it's okay to express how you feel. Like, it is a very satisfying thing. Try not to like express it right at your partner too much, but like, you know, you can laugh, you can cry. Like, I would say, you know, especially for the people that do process emotions through tears, now is a great time to get some tear-based core work, and not to worry about that sort of thing either.
I just want to do a quick shout out to Jem, who just joined our YouTube community. We appreciate you, Jem. Thanks for jumping on the board there. Really awesome to see that. Let's get to one more live question, and then we'll move into our after show.
Great.
Perfect.
Question from Bobby. Bobby says, David, is it possible to train for distance and speed? Been training for ultras, 50K to 50-mile distance, but really want to get my half marathon time down too.
Perfect segue.
Launched like the softball into the air because she knew that I'd be waiting. With,
Used to play volleyball. This one, perfect set.
Yeah.
Waiting for the spike.
Well, I can't really jump, but you know, I've seen videos of playing volleyball, so maybe I should bring them back in. So yeah, to get to the answer to that question, I don't think that training for distance and speed are counter. I actually think it's the same thing. And if you view it that way, you can get faster and faster and faster. That's how you get faster and faster and faster for 10 or 20 years. Like if you ever watch the show Westworld, where they're like, what is the center of the maze? What is the game? I think for runners, for endurance runners, the center of the maze is when you realize, oh, endurance and speed are the same thing. And when that happens, sky's the freaking limit. So the way that works in practice is that aerobic development forms the base of all that we do. You hear base training, it's there for a reason, it matters. It's all about capillaries around blood vessels, or capillaries around muscles, angiogenesis, improving your oxygen capacity or processing capacity, all that sort of thing. But the way that usually happens is from a lot of easy running. So training for endurance. On top of that, you layer in neuromuscular and biomechanical economy and efficiency. So what that is running really fast and knowing how to do that and being equipped to handle that. And then you throw on top of that musculoskeletal power and muscular endurance. So the ability to withstand certain types of stresses, whether it's, you know, putting out a lot of power going up a hill or just holding a longer effort for a period of time. All that then works together in this concerted whole. And that's why you have the best marathon runners in the world would also be the best 100-mile runners in the world if they did it. They'd also be some of the best milers in the world if they did it. That makes no sense if you're thinking about what the action itself is. It's totally different. But what it comes down to is that it's all the same thing, just pointed in a slightly different direction. So let's finish it off with like what that means for athletes, I think, when they're planning their own training, whether that's now or in the future, with now being a good excuse to think about the future. Most of your running should be easy, obviously. Let's, you know, really emphasize that. Embrace like trying to find that flow. Doesn't mean you're like learning to run easy fast. It just means you're learning that running can be as effortless as walking sometimes. Sometimes it sucks. Then on top of that, you layer in fast strides. Learn the ability to actually go fast. Easiest place to do this, if you're not used to it, is hills. On uphills, think about power, like how much power you're actually putting out with each stride, because that's what then increases your ability to run longer distances fast. So 1 to 3 times a week, do some faster strides. It can be 15 or 20 seconds faster, whatever. On top of that, after you've really started to increase your volume, start to work in workouts where you're running faster for a short period of time. And you mix all that together, and you get this athlete that even if your long run is just, you don't need to run that far in training. You don't need to go 20 miles all the time to be able to run 100 miles later. So, limit your long runs because you want to limit those breakdown stresses. You don't need to go crazy far. Lift your overall total volume without lifting the long runs too much. Increase your speed. And you'll find out that like long after this pandemic has passed, what you thought you were capable of is not even close to your true potential. And that's the message like I want to leave people with, is that belief isn't about, the touchy-feely Mr. Rogers stuff, though I really love that stuff. What belief's about is letting you understand that where your potential actually lies is so distant from where you can see right now. Even if you're watching this at 70 years old, you might need to reorient it a little bit. And once you get comfortable with that idea, once you get comfortable with living in the uncertainty of truly believing in yourself, much like the living in the uncertainty of a pandemic, can be pretty darn amazing, be really exciting. So let's believe and go for it.
I surely hope you're working on another book. With that last answer, I just want to hear David talk into my ear in an audiobook fashion forever. A quick dovetail on that, and I have a little bit of wine left that I'll drink in the after show every time I say dovetail. Was that David just released a video today? I watched it this morning of exercises that you can do.
I woke up to hearing David's voice.
Yeah.
Because you were watching it in bed this morning.
What?
You don't have his newest audiobook? You don't have that one?
Sounds kind of like ASMR or whatever they call it.
That's it. It's just David's ASMR voice in the earphones. Wake up. Wake up. It is a fantastic video. It's short, about 7 to 8 minutes, but it talks you through these lunge exercises, different versions, different ways to do it that will strengthen your legs, and it's great for speed. I'm injured. My hamstring is, I'm actually feeling like I'm getting recovered. So, but these are exercises that David gave me to incorporate into my routine.
With your
fantastic.
hamstring injury.
They are brutal. Like they are so strong and strength building that you will definitely be sore. So take it easy for the first few sessions. But David just released that video today on Trail Runner. So
it's Runner owes you a check because you're a large reason that became. I hate doing videos. I don't know how you guys do it, but that big reason was because I wanted to give you a vision of what I was trying to talk about with those exercises. So thank you for being my muse. Now,
oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
I've been incorporating them every day after every run, and the first day I think I walked inside and told Kim I'm more sore from those 8 lunges outside than I was from the miles of running. David, we're going to wrap up our main show. We're going to have our after show with you, of course, but can you remind people where they can find you, where they can get a hold of you regarding coaching services? Where can they follow you on Instagram, all that stuff?
Everyone knows where I am. I would say today, perhaps. So I'm not an employee of Trail Runner Magazine, but I would say if you can and you're not subscribed to Trail Runner Magazine, now would be an amazing time to do it. Media organizations are really struggling right now, and a lot of advertisers are pulling their planned ads, so the margins just aren't there. So if you can, subscribe to Trail Runner Magazine. And one more thing, the best fueling option, and this is purely like because I love the product, Spring Energy. Go to springenergy.com or whatever their website is. Order Spring Energy. Do you guys have a code? Is there a Ginger Runner code?
Yeah, we do. For our Patreon subscribers of, I believe it's $3 or above, there is a Spring Energy discount coupon.
Even more excuse. Combine your two. Get the Patreon thing and then get Spring Energy because it's amazing. And then for me, you know where to find me. And then I just poof off the smoke and post-production.
I don't think we're gonna do that. I don't have the ability. I want to add a smoke poof effect that I can just have guests just disappear in a blaze of glory. But David is right. Obviously, there's lots of ways you can support different people, different creators, small businesses. Yeah. myspringenergy.com, I believe, is what the website is for that. But yeah, go check them out. They're a sponsor of Tiger Claw as well. Lots of ways that you guys can support. And just a little behind the scenes, just in regards to YouTube in general, support creators. There's lots of creators on the platform. Income for YouTube creators is down a lot. Our revenue is down 42% on YouTube. We do not rely on it. We rely solely on Patreon. So our Patreon subscribers is how we live. But just a heads up of complete transparency, YouTube ad revenue is down 42%, while viewership is up 5%. So people are getting more views, but they're making half as much as they used to. So
Yeah.
we never made anything off of YouTube anyways. That's all the way up to the top. Not that anyone really cares, but that's a little bit behind the curtain, so to speak. GR Crew Member of the Week.
Yes.
We like to celebrate members of the community at the end of every Ginger Runner Live. People who go above and beyond, go push their own walls, break down barriers, all that good stuff in our GR Crew Member of the Week. So we get to recognize one of you. Kim, who is this week's GR Crew Member?
So this week's GR Crew Member of the Week is Melanie Boltby. And Melanie wrote in and said, with all the local trails and conservation areas closed, I was happy to explore new parts of the city and find some small pockets of trails that I haven't run before. Glorious to feel dirt under my feet again. So I chose Melanie as our GR Crew Member of the Week because I think we're all kind of in the same boat as Melanie. All of our parks, especially in Washington State, our parks are closed, our trails are closed, our mountains are closed. So just trying to find joy in running some areas that maybe you haven't run before out your front door, finding those little bits of dirt. We found a little piece of dirt yesterday.
Couldn't believe it. It was great. We ran that.
It was a very little piece.
It was 10 feet. And we ran it back and forth 8,000 times. We got our mileage in, though.
So way to get it done, Melanie.
Way to get it done, Melanie. And to all of the members who are watching tonight live, we appreciate you. We hope that you are finding peace and a little bit of smile here and there. We hope that this show provided you some information. David is just an incredible resource that just... someone recognized this on social media the other day, and we want to recognize it now. But David gives so much for free during these Ginger Runner Live episodes, just knowledge and inspiration and thoughtfulness and caring. So we just want to recognize that man for doing so much for this incredible community, both ours, Ginger Runner community, the swap community, as well as just the running community at large. So we are going to move into our after show. If you would like to join us for our after show with David, he's going to stick around for another 10 or 15 minutes and answer some additional questions. You can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/thegingerrunner. Anything from $1 on up gets you access to our after shows. $3 on up gets you access to our daily live shows called Daily Brew. And $10 and up gets you monthly shows as well. The levels are all broken down there if you would like to join us. We appreciate you all very much. Go ahead.
And for Daily Brew peeps, we have mugs for sale currently,
sure do.
And the pre-sales are closing when?
Wednesday. So if you are on Patreon, $3 or above, grab one of the mugs. They're limited edition Daily Brew mugs. They're amazing, big ceramic, heavy-duty camp mugs. They're over £1. It's just a good mug. It's 15 ounces, great for coffee, great for beer. But those are going to be closed as of Wednesday. So grab them if you want now. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to move right into our after show with David Roche. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you all.
On Ginger Runner Live 303. We'll see you next week.
Or tomorrow.
Or tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see you on Daily Brew tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or we'll see you at Ginger Runner Live next Monday. Get out there, train hard as you want, race harder virtually, and party the hardest. That we can all do. Bye.
Goodbye.
Ginger Runner.